Ever since he was a child, Armin had only one dream: to join the army. He trained harder than anyone in his town. He passed the written exams, the physical tests, and finally received the letter that changed his life. He was selected for training in another city. The camp was strict. Training lasted from sunrise to midnight. Discipline was everything. The recruits lived in military quarters, provided by the academy. Cameras were installed everywhere. No one was allowed to leave the premises at night, but rules often feel lighter when you are young. One evening, after weeks of intense drills, Armin and his two closest friends, Samir and Fahad, decided to celebrate. Just a small party. Nothing serious. They knew the warden would never allow it, so they planned something reckless. Behind the academy, beyond the fences, there was a dense jungle. They had heard stories about it, but never paid attention. Late at night, avoiding the cameras, the three of them slipped out quietly and ran toward the trees. The jungle was darker than they expected. No moonlight, no wind, no insects, just silence. They sat near an old broken stone structure and started laughing, playing music softly, trying to enjoy their little rebellion. Tenet began a faint sound, like dry leaves being dragged across the ground. They stopped talking. "Did you hear that?" Samir whispered. "It's probably an animal." Fahad replied quickly. They tried to ignore it, but the sound came again. Closer, not walking, dragging, as if something heavy was being pulled through the dirt. Armin felt his chest tighten. From somewhere deep inside the jungle, they heard what sounded like a whisper. Not loud, not clear, but it felt directed at them. Suddenly, Armin stood up. "We should go." No one argued. They backed up quickly and ran back toward the academy. None of them noticed that in the rush, Armin's silver bracelet had slipped off his wrist and fallen near the broken stone. Something else did notice, and something else picked it up. The next morning, training continued as usual. Push dash-ups, obstacle course, weapon drills, but none of the three were focused. The sounds from last night kept replaying in their minds. During lunch break, an officer gathered all recruits. His expression was serious. "Did anyone leave the camp last night?" he asked calmly. Silence. Armin felt sweat forming on his neck. The officer looked at them carefully. "You should know something," he continued. "The jungle behind this academy is not just jungle." The recruits exchanged glances. That land used to be an old graveyard. Decades ago, soldiers were buried there after a war. Some say not all of them were at peace. A nervous laugh escaped from someone in the group. The officer didn't smile. "Anyone who enters that place at night invites something back with them." The three friends froze. That evening, Armin finally realized something. His bracelet was missing. He searched everywhere. Under his bed, inside his locker, near the training ground. Nothing. Then he remembered the jungle. His heart dropped. That night, the camp felt different. He couldn't sleep. At exactly 2:17 a.m., knock. 3 slow knocks on his door. Armin sat up. Knock again. He looked at the clock. No one was allowed outside at this hour. He walked slowly to the door. "Samir," he whispered. No answer. He hesitated. Then he opened it. The hallway was empty. Cold air rushed past him, and on the floor, his bracelet lying perfectly still. Right outside his door, Armin swallowed. Without thinking, he picked it up The moment his fingers touched the bracelet, the lights in the hallway flickered, and the door behind him slowly closed on its own. He stepped back inside his room. That was his biggest mistake, because he wasn't alone anymore. Armin stood frozen in the middle of his room. The air had changed. It felt heavier, colder. He slowly turned around. At first, he saw nothing. Then he noticed something near the corner of the ceiling. A shadow. Not connected to any object. It moved, slowly sliding down the wall. Armin's breathing became uneven. The bracelet in his hand began to tighten. The thread wrapped itself around his wrist, tighter and tighter. "Who's there?" he shouted. The lights went out. Complete darkness. He felt something standing directly behind him, not touching. Just breathing. Cold breath on his neck. Then the bracelet thread suddenly shot upward, wrapping around his throat. Armin clawed at it. But the more he struggled, the tighter it became. The shadow stepped in front of him. It wasn't human. Its body looked twisted, like bones were broken and reassembled incorrectly. Its eyes were hollow, and around its neck hung dozens of old military dog tags. It whispered in a voice that sounded like dry soil shifting. "You entered my ground." The thread pulled tighter. Armin's feet lifted off the floor. His hands scratched at his neck. But there was no escape. The last thing he saw was the shadow placing his bracelet around its own wrist. The next morning, recruits gathered outside Armin's room. He didn't show up for training. The door was locked from inside. When they broke it open, they found him hanging, the bracelet tied around his neck, his eyes frozen in terror. Samir and Fahad couldn't take it anymore. They confessed everything. The officer listened quietly. Then he said something that chilled them both. "You were warned." From that day on, no recruit ever dared to enter the jungle again. But sometimes at night, from the trees, you can still hear something dragging across the dirt, searching for the next thing left behind.